Last month, I flew to one of my company's offices. I found an empty desk next to a colleague, opened my laptop, but the noise to my side kept bothering me. I looked over and noticed my fellow developer switch back and forth between keyboard and mouse. Click, type, click, enough. Have you ever seen a grown adult crawl across a room when they could just walk? So why do so many coders, people who should care about speed, go back to old granny mode, grabbing the mouse every few seconds when they're writing code? Vim motions aren't just for Vim users. They work in every modern code editor. Whether you use PyCharm or VS Code, these movements will make your coding 10 times faster. And it gets better. Tools like Vimium lets you browse the web with these same keys. Today, I'll show you how to make the keyboard cool again. Vim motions aren't just keys, they're a language so easy on your fingers that you won't just set them up everywhere, they'll become something you can't live without. I'll be switching back and forth between Vim and NeoVim here, but these basics apply everywhere. Yes, even if you're running Vim mode in VS Code. The first thing to know about Vim motions is the mode you're in. Different than most text editors, you start off in normal mode where you can move around text but not change it. This is shown here in blue, and you'll find similar indications with every other tool. The next thing we need to move are the arrows. In Vim, you shouldn't use your keyboard arrows. Yes, you can use them, but I suggest you don't. Let me even go further here. I suggest you unmap your Vim keys so that there's nothing to fall back to when you're learning. Our new set of keys are the famous H, J, K, L. H for left and L for right, as they are positioned in the most left and right edges of the four. Then J is your new downward arrow, which leaves K as up. If this is hard to remember, think of J as a down pointing arrow until you get used to it. And while this isn't a touch typing video, you'd want to keep both hands on the keyboard in a position where your index fingers are touching the small guides on J and F. These are your home row keys and the right way to keep your hands resting. So there we are, moving around. If you want to test your skills or build them in a more fun environment, Vim Adventures is a cool little game where you need to navigate a maze using your H, J, K, L keys. Try it out and find your way through the quest. So we can move around, but I think it's time to add some text. Getting out of normal mode is done mainly by using the I key, which takes us to insert mode. You'll see an indication changing below and the cursor changing to an editing cursor. Now I can write some text. To get out of insert mode and back to normal, the standard way is, can you guess? If you guessed escape, you got it. So I to insert, escape to move out. So you know the arrows, which means you already know enough to make changes to every file everywhere in Vim. Here's an interesting phenomenon. If I keep hitting I and escape to move in and out of the modes, my cursor somehow keeps moving backwards. The reason for that is that I isn't only changing to insert mode, it will start the changes before the current character position. There is a way to start editing past it, but we'll get there. Now you may see me escaping insert mode using a different combo, using JJ or even JK. Note that these are very common amongst Vim users because they eliminate the need to reach out all over to the escape key, but they're not default and require a dedicated mapping. In NeoVim, for example, mapping JJ looks like that, and I'll add the even better JK next to it so you can copy either or both if that's your preference. Okay, about that insert mode going before the character, to go past it or after it, we can use A. A is another way to drop into insert mode, but going in the direction of the writing. It may seem like nothing, but Vim is all about efficiency of keystrokes and lets you pick the best one to save an arrow motion if that's not required. Okay, here's something you'll find with lots of motions. Every new key you learn about has a capital counterpart. For example, A takes you to insert mode after the current position, but capital A starts writing after the line, making it extremely useful motion to add a comma or a period at the end of a line, or simply keep writing text after you pause to fix something. So another short recap. We talked about I for insert, A for append or insert after the current position, and since capital A takes you after the line for appending to the line, capital I is, well, before the current line, just like I is insert before the current position. You can think of it as a large insert or large append that are taken into consideration rather than the current cursor's position. Time for the real game changers. Moving around a line can be done using the arrows, one character at a time, but no one likes that. Wanna guess how you jump around words? That's right, with W. Any guess as to how you move back a word? Correct, with B. This makes traversing a line already 5 times quicker than holding an arrow or hitting it repeatedly. Another upgrade to these are E, marking the end of a word where W hits the start of it, which again gives you another key to save keystrokes and the freedom to move to the exact location you need with 1 or 2 keys max. Now, if you want to simply jump to the end or beginning of a line, while you can use capital I and A, you'd then have to escape to normal mode. So similar to regex, Vim offers the $sign to mark the end of a line and 0 to mark, well, the 0 point of the line at its start. One important remark about 0 is that it's the very first location of a line, regardless of whether the text begins there or not. And most lines of code in the world don't actually start there, and that is where the caret comes in. To be perfectly honest, I don't like using symbols to navigate as I don't find it easy to blindly find them, so I remapped capital B and capital E to mark the beginning and end of a line, but this comes at the expense of another motion, which we'll talk about later, and I chose to forgo. A quick break for a message from today's sponsor. Imagine having a co-pilot that not only understands your code but anticipates your next move. That's Windsurf, the AI-powered code editor from Codeium that's transforming how code is written. Windsurf isn't just another code editor, it's a comprehensive surface that understands your codebase, predicts your intent, and blends your creativity with powerful AI. You've got write, chat, and legacy modes to optimize your workflow and manage credit usage intelligently. Need to plan your next steps? Toggle between different modes within the same conversation. Tab functionality in Windsurf is my personal favorite. Tab to jump, tab to import, and context-aware suggestions that understand what's in your terminal. Cascade conversation history ensures you never lose track of your work. Browse and preview your projects right in the editor, select individual elements, and send them back as @mentions. Paste URLs for instant web search or use the @docs feature to access your popular libraries without breaking your flow. Windsurf isn't just for experienced coders. It's democratizing development for everyone. Bring your wildest ideas to life using a code developer that completes you. Get started completely free today with Windsurf by Codeium. Now back to the video. Now, keeping the theme of finding your desired place in a line, F stands for find, and followed by a character will jump your cursor to the first appearance of that target. So FS finds the first S it sees. Hit FS again and you'll find yourself in the next S in line. But 2 keystrokes to find another character? Surely Vim has something better than that, right? Right, semicolon repeats the last find command, so you can move forward through every line occurrence of the character in question. So FS to start and then semicolon to go further. Comma is the opposite of semicolon and will take you backwards to the previous found target. And like previously shown, capital F will search backwards from the cursor. So you don't have to use any redundant keystrokes to find even when looking behind. Let's upgrade our Vim language vocabulary and add a number to the desired motion. For FT, we'll find the 4th occurrence of T in a line. Same with 3 or 2, but it also works with other previously shown motions. You can move word by word or hit 5W to jump 5 words at once, to the beginning or to the end of them using E, for example. We know quite a few motions now. I think it's time to use what we've gathered so far to fix some code, shall we? So we've got a Python function that's missing a closing parenthesis and a colon. This might not be the most efficient sequence of keystrokes, but standing at the beginning of the line, I'm going to F to find an opening parenthesis, then hit E to move to the end of the word where I'll use a closing pair and a colon. Here's a cool Vim trick. To fix indentation to the best of Vim's understanding, hit equal twice on a line and it'll take care of it for you. You're not actually constrained to a line here and can mark many lines or the entire document, but we're not there yet. Another trick many users seem to miss is the fact that Vim knows all characters, including spaces. So just like finding a letter, you could find a space and move forward, which is something easier to find and even count if you want to jump 3 spaces, for example, as compared to jumping 3 M's, for instance. So we know how to move around words. We can also traverse text in a line. How about entire documents? Let's use a larger piece of code and learn the first basic 2 moves you've been always using your mouse wheel for. Going to the top or bottom of a document. GG goes all the way up, while Shift G takes you to the very last line. Vim is also aware of the visible document and can address only what's visually in front of you. For example, by taking you to the middle of the visible screen by hitting Shift M. If you're wondering, M alone is used for a different advanced feature called markers, which we're not discussing today, but let me know in the comments if that's of interest. The one key combo that is complementing Shift M, however, is ZZ, which will scroll the document so that the current line with your cursor is at the center. So instead of bring me to the visual center with Shift M, make this the visual center with ZZ. Here's a critical tip if you're just getting started. Using NeoVim, there's a popular plugin called WitchKey. If you're using the NeoVim distro LazyVim like I do, you already have it by default. And if you're curious about LazyVim, check the video above for more. WitchKey will open different menus as you build different motions in NeoVim, suggesting the next key based on what you're trying to achieve. Okay, we're now motion ninjas, but what about actual editing? I mean, sure, you can use backspace to delete text, but that's not really the Vim way of doing things. And what about copying, switching, general editing? Going back to our simple code function, let's start with the deletion operator. And yes, you guessed it, that would be D. DW deletes a word. U is for undo, by the way, although you probably managed to guess it alone by now. Here's something to get used to with the deletion operator. Under the hood, it's not actually deleting, it's more like cutting, meaning the next time you paste something, yes, paste is done with P, unless you deliberately told Vim not to save it, by default, you're going to see the last deleted object on screen. So in our case, pasting in the first line shows DEF that I just deleted a few seconds ago. This is happening for a good reason that's called Vim registers. I made a video about it, but it's quite old, so you know the deal, comment below to show interest in that. I promise you're going to love it. So we can delete and cut, paste and undo. How about copying? Well, Vim copying is actually called yanking and is assigned to the character Y. I can only guess this is done to save the C operator, which we'll discover soon. So YW yanks a word, which is now saved and can be pasted like earlier. And while we're at it, here's an unneeded line that I want to remove. And the quickest way to go about that is DD, which always deletes the entire line. Similarly, can you guess what YY is doing? Right, yanks an entire line. NeoVim is kind enough to mark the yanked bits in orange to help us register the motion. Now, here's a small riddle to check awareness and understanding of the Vim language. I'm yanking the word ipsum now, then when I paste it, it breaks the original copy in a very weird way. Why is that? Well, P, unlike I, acts after the cursor, assuming that's where most users want to paste. If you want to paste things before the cursor, can you guess what is P's counterpart? Right, Shift P. The same applies for lines, by the way. P pastes after the current line if you deleted or yanked an entire line, and Shift P will do the one above. Remember how we started by talking about normal mode being the default and then how you need to switch to insert to change text? Well, there are more modes to Vim. One of the more useful ones is visual mode, which helps with visual selection in more ways than you initially think. Hit V to start visual mode. You'll see the indication below and now add a motion. W, W, E, and visual mark extends itself based on how you move until you provide a closing operator like D, for example. I'm sure you can now imagine you can do anything with that. So we can talk about the last, quite rare Vim mode we're going to show today, replace mode. This is something useful when you want to write over existing text. Hit Shift R to start it and then start typing, where Vim will start covering everything in its way with your new text. Just write whatever you want. I mentioned undoing a lot, but not redo, which is the opposite operator, and you already know R is taken. Shift R is a mode of its own, so the only modifier left is Control. So Control R is redo. I think it's time to take our almost complete text manipulation skills and start going more deeply into code-related syntax, using brackets and other signs. So let's bring some beautiful JavaScript function and start with the pairs operator. % is an extremely useful motion, especially for languages like JavaScript and Go, using braces to enclose scopes. Hitting % will always take you to the matching counterpart of the current bracket or brace or any other pair. In this instance, the function scope in closing braces. So this works everywhere, whether you're inside of scope or out, lists, lambdas, it all goes. So with that out of the way, and this is important context to what comes next, let's talk about text objects, which are a little bit of Vim black magic and my personal favorite. Let's say I want to delete the word here. While DW works, DIW stands for delete in word and takes the entire object regardless of position. Both the delete and the closing range word can both be replaced with any other known combination of motion and range, like yanking in a paragraph with YIP and so on. Here's a DIP, delete in paragraph, to make the point. But wait, it gets even better. You can delete inside a function. Now I'm getting a little away from basic Vim motions and into the realm of advanced text objects, but I highly recommend anyone to install a text objects plugin regardless of their Vim flavor. Back to native text objects, remember how we said we can replace the preceding operator as well as the range at the end around the in word? Well, Vim also understands around. When a is used as part of a text object, you can get an operation on everything that surrounds the range. So DAW deletes around the word, meaning in this instance, both the word and the space next to it are getting removed. We didn't mention it, but while W stands for a word in its basic meaning, Shift W describes a word in its bigger sense, any sequence of characters between two spaces. DA Shift W, while standing on the word hello, would remove everything between the two spaces surrounding it. Using text objects can be done in any enclosing pair, brackets, quotes, even just a pair of percent symbols. One of the things I use most is CI opening parenthesis or quotes. The really cool thing about it is that you don't have to be between them to make it work. You don't even have to be on the same line. Check this out. DI opening parenthesis standing on the first character in the second line immediately clears the pair at the end of it. Doing the same with quotes works just as well. Now, here's the thing. Standing on the word name, I'm going to DI quotes. Since the motion is going forward and our next pair of double quotes are surrounding greeting sent on the next line, this is our target. Another important concept of Vim we didn't mention, and here's a great time to present it, the dot operator that repeats the last action. So I'm running delete in quotes and then I hit dot. It'll do exactly the same again and again until there are no targets left. It works like we mentioned earlier, even if I start from the very top. Delete in quotes, find the first one in line 3, then again in the line below that, then 3 targets at the last line. Remember, dot works on anything. If I start a new line, side note, O is a quick operator to start a new line in insert mode. Then I write the text word and go back to normal mode. Dot will repeat everything that happened in insert mode. Let's use some Vim language to delete these lines. Visual mode, but this time using Shift V to lead with marking the entire line, then 6K to move up 6 lines, and then D. Yes, I could have switched this to 6DK, which may have been shorter. This is one of the main reasons I choose to use Vim's relative numbers, counting the line distance relative to my cursor at any time and allowing for multiple line motions. This is done using setRNU and isn't default in Vim. Sometimes the best way to move to something in a document, especially if you can't see it immediately, is to search for it. The / operator starts a search. Let's search for the word print. Now, NeoVim is kind enough to highlight the findings. You'd have to set this in default vanilla Vim, search for HL search in the docs. To scroll through, find results, we use N for next and Shift N to scroll forward and backwards between them. Scroll is endless by default and doesn't stop at the last finding, so keep that in mind if you find yourself hitting N way longer than expected. If you want to reverse the order of search, meaning searching above the cursor and finding the first result closer to the end, use Shift / which is actually the question mark operator. Search and replace can become handy when replacing a variable name, for example, by changing the name to Omer, then hitting N followed by dot to repeat the last insert action, and then doing exactly the same. N dot, and we're done. We didn't touch the command mode yet, but this is where Vim's console, where it takes commands from the user. Hitting colon takes you there. In most vanilla Vims, you'd see this popping in the bottom of the editor rather than at the center like here, so don't be surprised. Now, this is where you save, quit. Yes, there is a way to quit Vim and run other operations. In this instance, I want to show another options for search and replace by running a simple regular expression. After visually selecting a range of text, hitting colon, I can run S, then slash for the target, separate it with another slash, and then replace the text with an emoji, close with another slash, and add G to make sure the result is globally fixed on all occurrences on all the selected lines, and there we have it. Similarly, if that was a bit complex, I can not select anything and just pop the command running %, which suggests the entire document as context, then the same switch command doing the same thing without selecting anything. Let's add a last visual operator I love, Ctrl V. That marks a visual block. I'll hit it, and now I can mark vertically across lines without taking into account the text. Now, to ingrain everything we just went through into your brain, let's go through these super quickly one by one. Hey JKL are Vim's arrows. The two basic most important commands are I to insert, and escape takes you back to normal mode. A appends, 0 and caret takes you to the beginning and end of a line. W traverses words hitting their first character, while E does the same but to their ends. B takes you backward, D is for delete, and then the useful DD removes an entire line. Y yanks, YY yanks a line. P pastes, ZZ centers the document around the current cursor position, while Shift H is the high position of the visible document. So D Shift H deletes all the way up to the visible top. Shift M is the middle of the current visible screen, and Shift L is the opposite of Shift H. R stands for replace, U is for undo, Control R is for redo. Back to V for visual mode, and we're done. Lastly, we need to save and quit Vim. The first and usual way is to go to command mode using colon, hitting Q and enter. If you want to save a document, you can use colon, W and enter. If you want to save and quit altogether, colon, W, Q and enter. In some cases, you'd have to brute force your way out of a document because of different conflicts and other stuff. If you want to force quitting a document, colon, Q and exclamation mark takes you there. By the way, a shortcut to save and quit a document, which is the easiest thing that I use all the time, is Shift ZZ and you're out. So you can now get around Vim, but this knowledge isn't complete without using it for its real worth, controlling the best programming environment in existence, NeoVim. If you want to get NeoVim configured with all the bells and whistles in 3 minutes instead of the usual weeks or months, check this video next. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.